So a few days ago I made a video where I went into detail about the offseason that the Lakers just had, and in that video I mentioned that the Clippers, they needed to have a better offseason than them in order to have a really good chance against them next season. And well, they didn't. They lost Montrezl Harrell to their own LA rival across the building, and rumors are now circulating that Lou Williams could also be on the move soon. And if that happens, that would probably be the worst possible thing that could have happened, because although they did pick up some valuable pieces this offseason, this would also mean that they lost their two main bench players over the last few seasons in the same offseason, and so I doubt that they want to let that happen. But as far as the title goes, even if they hold on to Lou Williams, this could be very bad for the Clippers still, because like I said before, they needed to have a better offseason, and now they find themselves in a very difficult spot next season, not only because of their 2020 offseason, but also because of some of the decisions that they made in the past that I've already talked about on this channel, but I'm gonna talk about them again. And so today we're gonna be talking about the Clippers in the past, the present, and the future, and why they are going to find themselves in trouble quicker than we even realize it. And so let's get into the video.
But it's important because when you're Kawhi Leonard, if I were talking to Kawhi Leonard, Brian, this is what I would say. All of these moves we made, these draft picks we surrendered, we did that for you. Paul George is here because of you. Because Kawhi Leonard wanted Paul George. He didn't want just another star. He asked for that guy. That's what he said. And he said, if you don't get it for me, I'm going to the Lakers. And I'm joining LeBron and AD. So let's understand, he essentially blackmailed the Clippers. That's why they gave up all they gave up to get Paul George, because they knew that's what it was going to take to get him.
So after the Clippers lost to the Warriors in the 2019 playoffs, it was already clear that they were going to be a team to look out for in the coming seasons. They were a 48-win team with no All-Stars. That just took the Warriors with Kevin Durant to 6 games. Not only that, possibly the most stacked free agency class in NBA history was coming up in the 2019 offseason, featuring big names like Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Kawhi Leonard, Kemba Walker, Kyrie Irving, and so on. This was important for them because coming into that offseason, they now had 2 slots for max contracts, so they could easily become a championship contender overnight, and that's exactly what they did. After the most dragged out decision ever, Kawhi finally made it clear that he was in fact going to LA, just not the team that a lot of people were expecting him to go to. Which, no matter what, LeBron fans still complain to this day about Kevin Durant, but wanted Kawhi, LeBron, and Anthony Davis on the same team because it helps LeBron. Anyway, Kawhi would end up going to the Clippers instead of the Lakers, which set off some red flags. Why would he leave Toronto when he literally just won a ring and finals MVP there? And why would he go to the Clippers? Well, that question was answered just a few minutes later, when Paul George was traded from OKC to the Clippers to fill the other contract slot. And this was the move that instantly put this team in a win now / championship or bust type situation, even though Paul George somehow thinks differently. This is mainly due to what they gave up for Paul George, which let's take a look at this again because it gives me anxiety every time I look at it. They traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, and swapped 2 picks in order to acquire Paul George. And throughout the season, it was looking like it was going to be worth it, with the Clippers right behind the Lakers nearly the entire season in the Western Conference standings. And then the playoffs came, where they got taken to 6 games by a hobbled Luka Doncic without his second best player, and then blew a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets in the second round of the playoffs and losing Game 7 in the most embarrassing way possible, going down by 20 at one point. Kawhi Leonard would shoot 6 for 22, and Paul George would shoot 4 for 16 overall, and 2 for 11 from 3. Paul George that game got outscored by both Patrick Beverley and JaMychal Green. Not only that, but this is an article that I found while I was doing research for this video. The Clippers gave up more first-round picks for Paul George than he had field goals in Game 7, which that is true. 5 first-round picks, 4 made shots. And so suddenly, the trade for Paul George was looking very, very questionable. because not only did this just happen, the Clippers have no first round picks until 2026, and both Kawhi and Paul George could choose to leave in the same offseason, which is 2021. And so that means that you have 1 year left to either make the finals or win a championship, if you want those guys to stay, I'm assuming. And so that's not a lot of time, obviously. So you had to have a really good offseason. But instead, you lose your 6th man of the year to your rival across the hall, and are on the verge of losing your next best bench player behind him. And even though they have signed some good pieces like Serge Ibaka and traded for Luke Kennard, it still might not be enough to overcome the Lakers. And so this is probably the most important season for your franchise the entire decade, because you have no first round picks until 2026. So if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George leave in free agency this offseason, if they both decide to opt out, you're done. Like, there's no way around it. I mean, I suppose you could now potentially trade Ibaka to get something back, but that would really be it in terms of contending or making moves for the foreseeable future. So to me, all this offseason did was put them in an even tougher spot than they already were. Because you might remember the last video I made sort of talking about this was before the draft and free agency. But now, on the other hand, they could also be making a turnaround this upcoming season because they now have a new coach in Tyronn Lue, which I don't think he's a bad coach, I really don't. But at the same time, the only time we've really seen him coach a team is when LeBron James was on his team. So I guess what I'm saying is that we don't really know how he is on the coaching side of things other than that, at least as a head coach, because he's been an assistant for this team for the last couple seasons. But we know that he's a great guy and his players usually like him, but that's something to consider. And this is nothing against him specifically. As a coach, that's the responsibility that you have to accept. And if you followed me on Twitter before I started doing this, then you'll know that I was and still am very critical of Steve Kerr. I don't think he should have won Coach of the Year in 2016 because, well, he wasn't even coach for half of the season. And on top of that, they had a better record under Luke Walton than they had under Steve Kerr. And so, how is that even possible? I've talked about how they were playing last season before Steph Curry broke his hand because he had Steph setting down screens for Omari Spellman, which in the past would have been Kevin Durant, so that just shows that he just straight up didn't adjust. And then he went to the media and basically said, "This is what you can expect from us." So that's what I mean when I say the things that I said about Tyronn Lue, because people still do have that conception that it was mainly LeBron and not him. But time will certainly tell, and I do have confidence in him setting a tone. The main focus for them coming into this season should be working on their offense, because that's been like the one thing that people have been critical about recently is their simple offense that they were running last season. If they just work on that, they would be set, because while they did lose a lot on offense this offseason in Montrezl Harrell, they maintained their defensive profile by picking up Serge Ibaka. And so that's one thing they really don't need to focus on as much. And who knows, maybe if they introduce an offensive system that everybody gets their touches and can thrive in, this might also help Paul George stray away from being playoff P, way off P, layoff P, or pandemic P. But of course we'll have to wait and see. But with all that being said, I want to know what you guys think of the Clippers this upcoming season. 2 questions. Do you think they're going to figure it out this season? And if they don't, do you think they are going to be able to keep this team together? Let me know what you think. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.